In order to make sourdough bread, you need a starter. The starter is what gives it flavor, it leavens it, it makes it rise, and it's the heart of sourdough bread. The process could take several days. It could take 7, 10 days. It could take 4 or 5. What we're looking for is for it to double in size. I've already measured all of this out, and so what I'm going to do is add, to start with, 50 grams of only whole wheat flour and 70 grams of bottled or filtered water, which is at a temperature of around 78 degrees or so. Room temperature to 78. Now you need to definitely get one of these if you don't have one. You're going to need to be able to measure in grams. And I clean it so I can see a little better it rising, but you know, honestly, the main reason I clean it is so it's easier to clean, because I'm going to use a new container to feed it. I'm going to feed it into a new container, and it's really hard to clean this stuff out if you let it dry. So if you don't clean it up, it's kind of hard. Anyway, you can see how it's going to rise. So this is going to get set near my computer, because my computer is about 78 degrees, and for 24 hours. 24 hours, and you can see it hasn't done anything. There's like 2 bubbles in it. Okay, but that's completely to be expected. Now, what I do next is I'm going to take 50 grams of this and put it in a fresh jar and throw the rest away. I'm going to add 50 grams of whole wheat flour again, just whole wheat flour, and we're dropping this down 5 grams. I'm going 65 grams of water. Should be about 78 to 80 degrees. 79 degrees. And we'll wait 24 hours. Unless it raises up above the line 25% or more, then I'll feed it in 12 hours. Okay, so I'm going 50 grams. That's exactly 50 grams. And I already measured this out. 50 grams. 65 at 79 degrees. I'm gonna mark it here. You can use a rubber band, anything, so you can check the level. And it is 8:30. Okay. A coffee filter. Put it in an area between 75 and 80 degrees. Probably 78 is probably perfect. Okay, here we are on day 3, and as you can see, it really didn't rise very much. I checked it last night at 12 hours, and it was the same level right here. It rose a little bit, but I like to see it up a little bit more than that in order to feed it. So I didn't feed it last night. Instead, I'm waiting the entire 24 hours, and here we are this morning. And I'm gonna do here is the same thing I've been doing. I'm going to feed, I'm just taking 50 grams, and I've already measured these out. So, and this is just whole wheat flour. Okay, so I'm going to add 65 grams of 78 or so degree bottled water to the 50 grams of whole wheat flour. I'll check that level in 12 hours. You can also use a rubber band instead of drawing on there. You might want to write the time down. I don't need to. I do it at the same time every day. So, okay, I'll set it aside. Okay, this is our 4th day. Now, I looked at this 12 hours ago, last night, and it wasn't up this much. So I let it go another 12 hours. So it's been 24 hours, and so it's good. It's starting to rise. It's got bubbles in it, and it's looking pretty good. So we're gonna stir it up and feed it. The only thing I'm gonna do different this time is I'm only gonna use 60 instead of 65. 60 grams of water, bottled filtered water. Okay, so I'm going 50 starter. It's exactly 50, and I've already measured these out. This is still doing whole wheat. We're gonna actually mix this up later. In a couple days, I'm gonna change this up a little bit. So we have 50 grams of whole wheat, and 60 grams of bottled water, warmed up to about 78 degrees. All right, I'm gonna set this into an area in my house by the computer that's about 78 degrees for 24 hours. I'll check it in 12 and see if it's risen enough, and if it has, then I'll feed it then. Okay, this is still day 4, but it's 12 hours. It's doubled, so I'm gonna go ahead and feed it and let it rest for the next 12 hours, and then I'll feed it again because we'll be on day 5. Now, normally on day 5, I change the flour to a 50-50 mixture of whole wheat and all-purpose. But because this doubled and I'm feeding it in 12 hours, I'm going to go ahead and change up the flour now. All right, so this is going to be 50 grams. Okay. Now I'm going to, these are measured out already. I'm going to add 50 grams of flour. This is 25 grams of whole wheat and 25 grams of all-purpose mixed together. .78 degrees bottled water. All right, we'll check it in 12 hours. Okay, I'm ready to do a float test and to see if it's ready to bake with. You just take a little bit out of here without crushing the bubbles if you can. And then I'm going to see if it floats. That's pretty good. It's floating pretty good. You notice my starter actually rose and started to fall, and it's floating like this. So I know when it's peaked, probably when it's at its height, but it's still good even after it's fallen a little bit, which I have a feeling will also make it a little more sourdough taste. Now, once you remove the starter for your leaven to make your sourdough bread, you'll be left with your starter. And there's a few ways you can deal with that. First, you can feed it every day. And I suggest, by the way, after about 5 or 6 days now, if it's doing what mine did right here, it's doubling for several days, start feeding it for a few days right when it needs it, which will probably be around between 4 and 8 hours. And just do that for a little while. And then at that point, if you decide to just bake every week and you just want to keep feeding it, go ahead and just feed it, once a day when you get up in the morning, or twice a day, every 12 hours. It's up to you. You'll get different kinds of results possibly. So experiment with a little bit. Now, if you don't want to bake every day, then you can always put a cover on top and put it in the refrigerator and let it sit there for 7 to 10 days, and then feed it. Bring it out, get warm again, let it rise, and feed it. Then put it back in the fridge again for a week or so. And it's just not hard to do. It's almost like a little pet. In fact, there's a lot of people that do this have names for their starter. The name for my starter is Snow White. Anyway, and another thing I did is I started mixing the flour 2-to-1 ratio of all-purpose to whole wheat. Now, this starter eventually was a 50-50 mix, if you remember. So I switched it up. I started doing it 2 parts all-purpose and 1 part whole wheat. And I think that's about ideal. So you might switch it up after a couple weeks. Now, you can always dehydrate the starter on some paper. I'm going to have a video on how to do that. And then once it's dehydrated, you can crumble it up and store it and bring it out 6 months later. And I get mine going again within 48 hours. So that's another option. And you can also freeze it. But like I said, I'll have a video that goes into that. All right, well, if this is helpful and you enjoyed the video, please like it, share it, maybe subscribe. And thanks for watching.